Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Activating Greatness, the show where we dig into what it really takes to lead with purpose, inspire performance, and create lasting impact. As always, I'm your host, Alec McChesney, and every episode, we're sitting down with leaders, thinkers, and change makers who are unlocking potential in themselves, their teams, and their organizations. Here, we're going to talk about the real stuff, leadership that drives culture, strategy that creates momentum, and the mindset that turns good intentions into game-changing results. Because greatness isn't a title, it's a choice. It's something that you activate every single day. So thank you. Thank you for listening, for showing up, and for being part of a community of leaders who refuse to settle for good enough. Now, let's get into today's guest. I am very excited for this episode. Joe, we've actually rescheduled this twice now in the first 3 weeks of the Activating Greatness podcast debuting. And so I'm really eager to finally get a chance to pick your brain on all the things that we're going to talk about. And I'm going to give Joe an opportunity to introduce himself, but I just as a high level, one of the reasons I'm so excited about having Joe on the episode is his experience. He's an executive coach and senior advisor within Velocity Advisory Group, but you have a really interesting perspective. You bring that rare combination of business leadership, entrepreneurship, the military service, deep coaching experience, and even though this episode's airing in early January, we've also recorded another episode with Harry Barnick that's coming out in a couple of weeks where we got to see you in real time talk to somebody that you've coached. And I just really admire the way that you think about things, the way that even you and I have kind of pushed on each other within the first couple of months within my time at Velocity. So, Joe, thank you for taking time out of your day to share your story, share your expertise. Before we get started, would love to have you, do a little bit of a further introduction for those who aren't familiar with your game yet, Joe.
Thanks, Alec. This is always feels like the most awkward part is to talk about ourselves, right? And I don't know why, but whenever I explain my history and background, I always use the word eclectic. It's really kind of random, but that randomness in what seemed like chaos looking back all has somehow created like a perfectly written story to bring me where I'm at today. And it started off in sales at large media company in New York City, where I'm a sales assistant, and went to at the beginning one of the largest and fastest growing digital companies, a company called DoubleClick that was competing with Yahoo and AOL right before Google came out, and being a part of a culture that was really, really strong. And I was doing inside sales, so learning just the fundamentals of sales with a strong team, and then moving out to Northern California, part of a lot of .coms, and mostly were .busts for me. And then that led me to, hey, I'm kind of getting tired of laid off, and these cultures don't seem to have the same as this DoubleClick culture, but it didn't quite click yet, right? I'm a slow learner. Like, I'm the kid who stuck my finger in a socket twice as a kid, right? I just kind of takes me a while. But that entrepreneurship just stretched me so hard to do things that I didn't want to do, didn't like to do, the accounting, the bookkeeping, but really getting my hands dirty in all aspects of the business. Some things I got right naturally, a lot I didn't get right and had to learn and modify. And it really all, and then you can throw that in with my military service. And I was in the Army Reserves, did one tour overseas in Iraq. And that is process, system, standard operating procedures. There's cadence of how things run. And so those two worlds of entrepreneurship, which feel like chaos and process from a large organization, how they fit in together for best practices, I think really help shape me. Then of course you get deployed to Iraq, and it's very entrepreneurial. You have to, everything in the book, you kind of throw it out and say, hey, what do we need to figure out together? So those helped along the way. And then it all really came together when I was at a nonprofit helping veterans start and grow business, an accelerator program called Bunker Labs. I ran the Philadelphia chapter with another guy, Mike Mayer, and we had to create curriculum. And there's no better way to grow than to teach and see how the people are interacting and learning what's resonating. And then the other thing we had to do is run monthly events where anybody could show up. And I'm standing in front of a room and sharing ideas and having guest speakers and interacting. And I was just listening to a podcast with some comedians, Jerry Seinfeld, about how you read the subtleties of facial expressions real time, whether I'm doing a one-on-one executive coaching session with somebody or I'm front of a room of 20 people or 150 people, how do they all respond to whatever it is that we're trying to come
Mm.
across? And ideally, what's cool about what we do at Velocity is I just don't want to go up and speak and entertain. I want them to take that idea and apply it and drive change for the better for them, their team, and the company as well. So hopefully that wasn't too long or, yeah.
No, I'm dialed in already, Joe, and I think, it's a perfect segue to the topic of our conversation today. And I think this is a topic that you're really passionate about within this concept of momentum and
Mm-hmm.
how leaders build it, how they lose it, how they regain it again, and how do we actually utilize this as a tool going forward. And in your introduction, one of the things that you called out through these different stops is being able to learn and modify. And hey, this might not have worked, but I'm going to take what did
Mm-hmm.
work from it and move forward. So, I think our goal for today is to kind of demystify some of the things within management and then put an emphasis on momentum. But before we get into it, I'm curious, why momentum, right? What is it about this concept around momentum management inside of organizations? What is it that led you in your past 20, 30 years, whatever it might be? What is it that led you to being passionate about this concept as a whole?
So one, I remember talking about this with Ryan Payne, like one of our colleagues, a couple years ago, and Ryan had success like 5, 6, 7 times when he was at Geico about taking teams that were heavily underperforming and in 12 to 18 months make them a top performing team. And I looked at a lot of my experiences, which teams were healthy and operating at like a fast speed, which ones were in the middle, which ones were struggling, whether I was a leader or not a leader. And I just spent a lot of time over the last couple of years just really thinking about that and thinking about the patterns that occurred, as
Mm,
well as talking in a lot of the executive coaching, talking to individual leaders and really pulling out what are common challenges, what are the patterns that exist, what are the mindsets that exist and how they operate.
yeah.
So when our leaders said, hey, can you guys put together a management program for newer managers, people who haven't gone through management program, we had a lot of it already scripted and written down into years of notes. And a lot of those frameworks I've already put together and have been coaching them through. So it's still like a lot of heavy investment, but at the same time, we had already spent time really, to your point, demystifying this, because I think people end up, if I'm like a newer manager, or even, by the way, these same concepts apply to C-levels at large companies too, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we frame it this way, but usually people who are put in newer positions, and it could be a VP with 100 people, it could be a manager of 6 people, they tend to go one of two directions oftentimes. Either they're overconfident and think they know too much, and they're over directive and over indexed that way as far as a little over aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
or they're underconfident and they don't make decisions and they suffer from what I call the imposter syndrome component, right? So one is over ego, one is imposter syndrome. And this feeds off an element that we talk about in momentum, where I talk about the 4 phases of competency, which we all go through this on a regular basis. But imagine whether it's you're new at a company, which you've just joined, or you're a brand new employee someplace and you're 23 and have never really had a real job before. The first phase is we're unconsciously incompetent. We
Mm-hmm.
don't know what we don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so therefore a manager may say, hey, do you have any questions? We're like, I don't have any questions. We were like, oh, well, he must be good to go because he doesn't have any questions. The reality is that I don't have any questions to ask because I don't know what questions to ask, right? We don't
Mm-hmm.
even know where to start. So we start off with unconsciously incompetent, then we move to conscious incompetence, meaning we're being introduced or leading or trying something and it's not working out. We suddenly become aware of what we don't know, and then we can hopefully start to ask questions, and then we move into the conscious competence where we have to think about things. It's second nature, to eventually we become unconsciously incompetent. So a lot of our training programs, we do it a bridge. Hey, remember, I always challenge leaders, remember what you forgot, remember what it felt like to
Mm-hmm.
be a new employee on the first day and what you didn't know and the questions people ask, and how do we bridge that to expedite and speed up that learning process? Because inherently I see leadership is all about knowledge sharing, and we're not going to be able to download all of our wisdom with somebody in 6 weeks, right? But we can plant seeds and then give them resources and tools and where to go find the information when it's time for them to find that information.
I love it. I love it. So much good. I want to pick on two things here, double click on these. The first one is the commentary around overconfidence and then imposter syndrome. And you and I have connected on this on LinkedIn. I was just finishing up when we're recording this, the new Brene Brown book on standing your ground. And she talks about it within the realm of sports in this book. She goes super sports heavy and is talking about pocket presence. And she interviewed Sarkisian at Texas about pocket presence. And they really broke it down that there are two ways that you get it wrong. You're either so confident that you are, I don't care, I can do anything, and we get in trouble that way. Or there is the fear, and it's I'm unable to make a decision. I get happy feet and I start to lose. And it sounds like there's a lot of alignment between those two. And I think a question that she asked, and now I'm going to ask of you, is that something that is innate? Do I as an individual have that, or am I born with it? Is it something that we could teach? And obviously we do it through the momentum management and foundations here at Velocity. But what's kind of the thought process on, hey, that's something that is instilled from the very beginning, or that's something that somebody can learn and grow and really build that pocket presence, or in this example, those 4 areas of competency? How do you decipher that when leaders are asking you those questions, when they're trying to make the objections of, should we even invest in this at that level? What does that look like to you?
So I think comparing it to that, I'm a quarterback in a pocket, and either it collapses on me, I get sacked, or I let the ball go, and you see this real time with professionals, right? There's only 32 starters in the league, and I think that's a good metaphor. And so what I like to say is that what we try to demonstrate and teach in this program is that while there's certainly a lot of art, there's a lot of science, and then we can demystify, a word you used that I used a lot too, using mechanisms to know, hey, let's build the framework out, let's build the system out, let's build a process out. And if you do these things, you're probably going to be certainly better than you were before. B, probably better with your peers. Your teams will have more clarity. And it really drives cognitive behavior change. If we're doing X, we're going to see better results, and we gain more confidence, and they gain more confidence in us. Something as simple as running a good, effective meeting. We assume that a new manager knows how to run a good meeting. Now, I'll stand in front of a room of leaders and say, hey, what are your challenges here? They always say communication, and they always say culture. I would say, great. What the heck is communication? And I'll say, how are your meetings? They're like, terrible. Well, let's make our meetings better, because that is a mechanism of communication, and they have too many and they're not effective. There's no action items. Nobody's saying, great, Alec, we've decided on this. You're going to take this. I'd like to see it done by next Friday. Does that work for you? Yes, it does.
Right.
We've gotten so soft and not being deliberate about our communication in these things we call meetings, where we're coming together, solving problems, and they become a waste of time. And then people are like, meetings are just a waste of time. Right. So I think meetings are just a good example of a mechanism used to drive something as important as communication. So there's a lot of mechanisms that we integrate into momentum, that if you do these mechanisms well, you'll get a better outcome and thus get a better result, and help you as a manager. And most importantly, help provide clarity for your team, but they know what to do to make sure we're operating the same way. And then you can come alongside them with care and coach them on some of the smaller nuances on how to get better at what they do, and do it the way that, the velocity way, if you may, and not the Joe way that I did at a previous company, or that, I'm kind of making up on my own because I'm unconsciously incompetent. I don't know any better. And when we can do that, it actually removes a lot of stress on ourselves as a manager to feel like we're guessing, are my people doing well? Are they not doing well? Do I need to have a critical conversation? Do I just need to mention something? Do I need to fire them? Do I need to promote them? People's heads spin because we don't integrate clarity and competence, combine those with different mechanisms to say, Hey, if I've got an employee, I'm really just holding up a mirror on things I told them before and say, here's where you're benchmarked, here's where you're at, here's where you need to get better. And everything doesn't have to have a lot of energy. So it removes a lot of this anxious energy around leadership if we build
Mm-hmm.
mechanisms in along the way. I don't know if that makes any sense at all.
It absolutely does. And I think we've talked about on this podcast before the people versus the process, and that you have to have right people in the right seats, but you also have to build these processes in, and you have to have the right mechanisms for one-on-ones, for team meetings, for X, Y, and Z. And to your point about the demystification, I think on the other side of that, we see a lot of leaders that just overcomplicate this process. And, I think you said over-index in that direction, but all of a sudden we take all the humanity out of it, and we are moving so fast. Anxiety is running at an all-time high. And sometimes it's like, hey, if we just fixed our one-on-one process, if we fixed our weekly meetings, teams would have a better feeling at the end of the week, or a more comfortable feeling starting the week. And again, I think sometimes those things are so overlooked because we expect change to be drastic. We expect the solution to be some otherworldly, like this brilliant idea that comes in, and a lot of times it's staring right in front of you. It's the medicine of stretching, right? Like, hey, we need you to stretch before the day. And so I'm curious, how do you, I told you I was allowed 2 bad podcast questions. This is the first
There's
of
no bad questions, Alec.
Hey, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I'm gonna,
which is kind of a lie, but it's okay.
We preach that. We talk about being able to ask questions, but I always love bringing in some random ones. I think about this. I posted on LinkedIn today. It's December 18th. This is airing a couple weeks into January, but I posted about this today. Everybody seems to be in alignment with these conversations. Yep, we need to have better meetings. Yep, we need to have better communication. Yep. We know this works. And yet, it is still such a hurdle for people to get there. It's a hurdle for people to invest in it. It's a hurdle for people to go from that, I know we should be doing this, to we're actually doing it. So my tough podcast question for you today is why, Joe? Why? Why is that the case?
If I had to analyze, one, I think that there's an element of people are afraid to disrupt something that already exists. Hey, I just joined Velocity. I've been here 3 months. Our meetings really aren't great, but I guess this is just the way things are. So I don't want to be the one to say, hey, I think we can get better here, right? So there's a fear of offending other people. And that could be a cultural component, that this is where I think the top leaders, or even if you own your own department, sometimes you can't change the whole company, but you can own your department, to welcome and truly welcome a growth mindset versus a fear of making mistakes and helping people. Like, hey, listen, what do we need to do to get better? And to demonstrate that and to show it and not make excuses, right? So one, there's a fear of offending other people if I suggest things. And some cultures are that if you make suggestions, it's not helpful. And I do feel like that we've, again, went from where leadership was very dominant to where it's become overly passive in many ways, where we just don't want to disrupt things because then it looks bad on me and I become safe. Either way, they're not healthy, right? Because it's actually has nothing to do with what achieving the mission in a unified way together. If we actually are mission focused as a team, we put our egos aside to say and do what's right, and not either self-preserve because I don't want to disrupt, or dominate for self-advancement either, right? Either way, it's not healthy, right? So I think that's one reason, is just the fear to offend. The other side is, I think some people don't want more work. Everybody wants to be a consultant. Everybody's got an idea, but nobody wants to say, hey, like, cool, I think our meetings can get better. Well, Joe, how about, because if I say that, then Alec may tell Joe, great, can you come up with the whole process and plan and training for the whole company to roll that out? Yeah. They're like, oh, I've already got things on my list to do. I don't want to be the one to do that. So I'm just going to stay quiet, because it goes back to self-preservation, right? It's not a team growth mindset perspective.
I love that.
And I've run into consulting companies, especially with a lot of scientists, where everybody's a consultant, they've got ideas, but nobody's doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I challenge the leader. You have to get comfortable delegating. It's your responsibility, assigning and saying, hey, listen, we all agree our meetings aren't great here. You three come up with a plan and go execute. There's all the information in the world is at our fingertips, even more so from over the last 2.5 years with generative AI to be, give me a framework for how to implement good meetings and how we could change this. And then there's the people who just struggle with change sometimes.
Yeah.
We get comfortable doing what we've always done, and sometimes as leaders we need to get people a little uncomfortable or try something new. And there's friendly ways to do that, ways to reward, ways to recognize, ways to integrate. But once you make that change and drive change, anybody who's new joins the company doesn't know any better. This is just the way it is.
Yeah.
Right? And they assume that this company has always been this way. We always drive meetings. So I think off the top of my head, those are probably the three reasons why, if we don't have good meetings, why we don't change to make better meetings, but actually push people in the momentum program. Hey, it's your job. If you don't have good meetings, it's your fault.
Yeah.
You actually have control. If you're booked from 9 to 5 with back-to-back meetings, you can change them to 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You can change the cadence to every other week. You can talk to your supervisor and say, I think this could be time in Teams chat, and take it off. So learning to take control and this goes back into that some people are unconsciously or consciously incompetent to not realize you actually have the ability to take more control than you think you do.
Yeah.
You just assume that these are the way they are.
And a lot of times people are wanting that from the individual, and
Yes.
it's stepping into that role. And I love the three directions you went. And I think of, one of my favorite books that I've read in the past 3 years is called The Jolt Effect. It's really focused within B2B sales specifically, but it talks about, for a really long time, the historical perspective on buyers not going forward was this concept of the status quo, and we're just not going to move forward because of the status quo. And what their book goes through, it's the same guys who wrote The Challenger Sale. It's Matthew Dixon. It's an incredible read, but he goes through all of the data, and they actually discover that they lose over the last 3 to 4 years, more deals are being lost because it's not we're comfortable with the status quo. It's I, as the buyer, don't want that responsibility of changing the status quo. And I would rather something not work and it be the established process that does not work than I suggest a new pathway and it not work over here. And it's the fear that is connected between those two. And I think it's a very similar process. I'm a good example. I joined Velocity 3 months ago, and you come in and you ask one question, and depending on the company, they might say, well, we've always done it this way. And that is the worst saying that I've ever heard. It always, it's nails on the chalkboard for me when it doesn't work. Right. And you could go to any business that went from that good to great, the great to the next level. They had to have people that were willing to make those changes, but at the same time, they had to have an environment where they could come in and ask those questions and make those, suggestions, and not instantly get shut down, and not have a no and or a no but more of that yes and culture, or just digging into it deeper, why change is actually needed.
Yeah, and I look at it as a lot of these little changes are micro innovations.
Yeah.
Right? It could
It's
be
on the margins.
Like 100%. And hey, how do I book meetings more effectively rather than bouncing 5 emails back and forth over the course of 3 weeks to schedule time with somebody? Well, they have this new system called Bookings, or what's the other meeting?
Yeah.
Hey, click this link, pick a time that works best for you. Simple. Hey, can you sign this agreement? Click this link, click sign, rather than PDFs back and forth. I didn't get it. So that's an area where I challenge managers is, listen, the iPhone isn't the iPhone 1 anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We're in version, I don't know, 17, 18, whatever it may be, because we're constantly innovating. And so we as managers need to look at, all right, if there's a pain point on our team, and this is actually a good mechanism that I had to learn over time, because I indexed over the kind of overconfident side or
Mm.
over authoritative to do what I call discovery mode. And I remember when I first joined here not too long, Dave Feckman, our CEO, was like, "Hey, Joe, can you help with our sales process?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, I can help with that." But I wasn't hired as a head of biz dev. I was hired as a facilitator and do a delivery. So I wanted to make sure, what does that mean for me?
Mm-hmm.
Am I being thrust into a new role? Nope, just need help. Great, I can do that. And what's your time frame? So I did a lot of owl energy. I had enough confidence to get clarity. And then I did my discovery, which is I asked all the key stakeholders, hey, what's good? What's not good? What would you change? What would you not change? 10-minute conversations with all these different people to give me a good understanding. Because young Joe would have just come up with a plan and said, here's what I think a plan is. Because
Yeah.
I know best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the answers were so interesting because they're so like, somebody's like, I think it's great. I wouldn't change a thing. Somebody else is like, I didn't even know we had a sales process, right? I'm totally
Yeah.
confused, right?
Yeah.
Shockingly, one was a partner in the been for 12 years, one was a new employee that just got there. So to get people's information, aggregate it, compile it, reshare it with all the stakeholders and say, here's what people are saying. And
Mm.
here's the ideas. As a result, I think I'm recommending this. What is your feedback? What would you change or not change? Now we can gain some consensus and gain support. People can understand how other people feel. And it's not an
Mm.
idea coming from Joe. It's an idea that's coming from all of us to come up with
Everybody.
something.
Yeah. Gosh, I cut you off there, Joe, because I'm excited about just the framework. We talk about everybody has some version of sales, right, in their own role. You have to be able to sell internally, sell up, sell
Yes.
down. And so much of this is when you think of a great sales process, that discovery, talking to multiple stakeholders and then getting those different commitments, commitment to invest, commitment to change, commitment for time, and being able to do that when there's no budget involved and it's an internal project that you just got help on, like that system, being able to install that for a change management process internally is just a fantastic way to replicate something that we know works, and we just might need to bring it in-house for an individual team to be able to use it as well.
Yeah. So a phrase I use all the time, and stole from the Navy SEALs, of which I was not. Right, they're way sharper, tougher, more disciplined than I am. Is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So for me, moving forward and just, hey, here's my decision. It's faster. Well, it's not faster because you don't have buy-in, right? And therefore, when you want to roll out an idea or a software or something to people and they don't buy in, you're going to meet resistance from at least somebody on the bell curve. And then there's sometimes quiet resistance or sometimes there's loud resistance. And so I use that phrase a lot in a lot of what I try to do, which is sometimes how do we operate a little bit slower to be a little bit smoother, to think about contingency plans so that way when we go and operate and execute, it's smooth and it feels a lot faster in what we're trying to do versus trying to rush things through and then we're wondering why we're not getting traction.
And sometimes all that looks like is giving certain stakeholders a chance to be heard for 10, 15, 30 minutes. We at my old agency, we used to, in the branding process, we knew the CEO sometimes wouldn't care at all, but we knew 6 months from now, they might all of a sudden raise their hand and say, wait a second, why are we doing this? And so
that's right.
Having 30 minutes with them at the very beginning to just get alignment on what their goals are for this and what they would expect to see. And do you hate the color pink? And then all of a sudden, 6 months from now, they feel like they were at least included in that process rather than, they were looked over and suddenly they have issues that they're bringing back to the table. And so it doesn't have to be this massive overtaking or, whatever the saying might be. It can be, again, systematic in that effort as well.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. I got a question for you, Joe.
Is this bad question number 2 or is this a good
probably
question?
Yeah, I don't know. They're all listen, it's They gave me a
First question,
microphone.
I give the first question a good 8.6. So it's not a bad question at all. It
There
was
we
pretty
go.
good.
It was a tough question. You answered it great. This question is: we have the talent on the team.
Mm,
We're hitting our numbers quarter after quarter, and the morale seems high, and then suddenly we lose one client or we lose
mm,
one big deal, and we think, hey, it's not a big deal. It's not a big problem. We've been great for the last year, and then suddenly, there's kind of the knocks in the armor a little bit.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How can we sooner identify that this is actually momentum stalling and not just a punch to the gut, right? And I think the reason that I'm asking this question, I've seen in the life sciences specifically, where I've been
Sure.
for the last 4 years, they've had an absolute roller coaster since 2020. And it's
Mm,
so up and it's so down and it's so up. And what I've seen is sometimes we're 6, 9, 12 months too late to
mm,
recognize that this isn't just a bad 1 month. It's a
sure.
trend, and
Yep. Yep.
morale's at an all-time low, burnout, and then all of a sudden 3 top employees leave the organization. And
Mm.
so how do we build in the checks and balances, the safety checkpoints, whatever you might refer to them as? How do we build that in as part of this process, and how can leaders be better at identifying momentum actually stalling and not just one or two things going wrong?
It's a great question and a hard question. I don't know if there's any one answer, right? Because there's probably 100 reasons why a company can scale and grow. Sometimes the founders and leaders have very little to do with it. I've met some terrible leaders who are fragmented, but their business took off, and
Yep.
vice versa. I've met great leaders who have great ideas, but there just was no product market fit, or the product market fit ended or changed. I mean, name the many companies, whether it's Xerox or somebody else, that had market share, and suddenly there's some new innovation or invention,
Yep.
Kodak, that disrupted everything. So I'd say one, which is why I really stress building solid, controlling what you can control
Mm.
in the, which is a lot of what we push in momentum, which is role clarity. I know what I'm here to do. Setting good goals, good business practices that allow for faster communication. I always start with culture and values. Right? Culture and values will keep your roots grounded when you're going through a storm, and
Mm.
when you recover from the storm, you recover faster than anybody else, and you can grow back faster. If you have a culture and values issues, you're going to be toast at some point in time, no matter what.
Yeah.
So that gets into mindset, and usually the C levels, either they usually have it or they don't. Right? If they're just people who are not values driven people, I can't come in and teach a class on it suddenly change their mind.
Right.
So you got to have the strong foundations, and if you have those, I look at it as a process of elimination. If
Mm.
we've got good culture values, we are clear on what our mission is, we're clear on what our vision is, we've got good best practices as far as an org chart, we know what people are here to do, we've set goals for them, they're going to go execute their goals, we're communicating effectively, we have action items in line, we're measuring them, we've got KPIs to track what we're doing on a monthly, quarterly basis.
Yeah.
If that infrastructure is built, then we can identify what the problems are faster, and then those aren't the problem,
Mm.
right? We can eliminate, is this a communication issue, is it a talent issue? No, we've gotten really good at hiring good talent, which was something I struggled with early on as an entrepreneur. Kind of going back, like, I'm like, oh, they say they're a nice person, they like the job, they'll take the pay we want, decent university, you're hired. And then I
Yeah.
realized I didn't know how to go through the nuance of how to distinguish really good talent, how to appreciate and nurture talent, give them clarity and let them
Mm.
go. um, so I'd say good fundamentals will reduce the pos, like help you identify what could be going wrong, and then you're like, okay, is it product market fit? Is it competition? Is it the economy? And then from there
Mhm.
we could say, what are we in control of? What are we not in control of? Well, I'm not in control of the economy or inflation,
Mm.
but our competition has integrated a new feature that is really disruptive. So I went through this I had a partner, we had a logo design company, it was one of the first online logo design companies that existed, come in. drop $100, get 3 logos designed. We had an operation of designers over in Southeast Asia. We send the logos back, and we were doing well, progressing well. We were overly relying on Google search. At one point in time, we were like, we're kind of gaining some traction, and all of a sudden, we started to plummet. And we're like, what is going on, right? And one, our Google rankings dropped, the economy dropped, and a new competitor came in called 99 Designs. It was called crowdsourced designing, right? Somebody could say, hey, I'll pay $300, whoever gets me the best design, and they get like 100 concepts. Well,
Yeah.
100's better than 3. And it was fun and engaging. Now, they were just the middle platform. So we're like, ooh, do we have to change our whole model? And we came to the conclusion, it was a very painful process because, again, we're having to drive change, and we wanted things to be the same. We were hoping it would come back, but hope's not a strategy. So we shifted our whole business model. We had our designers just be our team freelancers. And it took about a year to do, came back way stronger. Margins were better. The designers were making more money, way less stress. Clients were happier. We made money in ways we didn't imagine. And it just was a better decision. But it was a really, really hard decision. But we felt like we were doing enough right that we could figure out what the key problems were and be decisive, which you have to do as a leader, make some hard decisions rather than kind of sit and wait. And kind of same thing. Part of those hard decisions meant letting people go, right? Like, hey, we don't need that talent. We need different talent sometimes.
Yeah.
And getting the right people in the right seats is absolutely critical.
Well, that could allow you to avoid the shiny object syndrome, right? I think when we go back to, I love how you broke it down. Is it a communication? Is it the economy? Is it the product market fit, right? And is it a competitor, new entrant into the market that changes things? I think a lot of times we want to chase left and right because we had a bad quarter. And it's like, whoa. Is the strategic purpose of the company changing? Is our role in the lives of our clients changing? No, but we didn't hit our number. And it's like, well, okay, then let's figure out why we didn't hit our number, not change for the sake of pressing that panic button. And then, I think the more that we can not only identify it, but also speak to those problems in your internal meetings and say, hey guys, like, we know that this was a bad quarter and X, Y, and Z is what we've started to uncover. And again, add some of that humanity back into it, which I know, we've talked about at length a couple of times. And you're somebody who, in the 2 podcasts that I've recorded with you, have been vulnerable when things didn't work out for you. When they have worked out for you, you tell it in a way where you're taking lessons from it. You apply the servant leadership methodology to all of this. And so how do you take all of those lessons, all of the things that we've talked about for the last 37 minutes now, Joe, and how do you package that into executive coaching, into momentum management, into the one-on-ones that you have even at Velocity? Like, how do you take all of this and apply it? And I'm going to add one extra layer of context to the question, which is, a lot of times with Velocity, we get asked about how we serve different industries. And for lack of better terms, we could serve any human being that works in a business at all. We could serve. And obviously we have some niches, but how do you take something like the military and then you take in your work with a logo design company and then another industry and then another industry? And how do we make those lessons applicable to the next industry that we're talking to, the next company that we're talking to? How do you do that on a day-to-day basis in your role at Velocity?
So it's a good question. I'd like to say pain has been my greatest teacher, right? So, and if I'm paying attention to my pain points, then there's probably a lesson to be learned. And this kind of really goes back into, one, for ourselves as individuals, having a continuous growth mindset, and how do we integrate that into our teams, into our culture, which is like, we never arrive. So when I was working with a lot of these new startups or even doing executive coaching, I'm like, if we recognize that we're on a journey and there's no arrival, it's a different way in how we frame our day to day, and that we're just looking to continuously improve everything that we do.
Yeah.
right? And so to answer your last question, which is how can we apply a principle from the military to insurance to construction to some of these industries that we work in? One, people aren't radically different everywhere we go.
Mm,
Now we see patterns of behavior and leadership styles, but organizational leadership cultures usually kind of fall into a couple different buckets. There might be some nuance, but this goes back into momentum, which there's certain fundamentals that if we implement these basics, we get better outcomes. We're going to use the
mm,
football thing. Stop jumping off sides, right?
mm-hmm.
Stop doing personal fouls. Now, you may get called for a pass interference call sometimes because you want to prevent a touchdown. We can live with that one. But pass interference, personal fouls, there's certain things showing up on
Mm-hmm.
time. How do we integrate disciplined behaviors? How do we run a good meeting? How to run a good performance review? How do we hire the right people? So one thing when it comes to management too, I'm like, hey, imagine you took Phil Jackson and you took the 5 best basketball players at Velocity and he was our coach. Now imagine you get the worst basketball coach in the world and you get 5 NBA players. Who's winning? Not Phil Jackson
Not
in
Phil
Velocity.
Jackson.
It doesn't
No.
matter. If you don't get the right people in at the right time and put them in the position to win, you could be the best manager on the face of the planet. You're in trouble, right?
Mm,
So I think that's why I focus so much on the fundamentals to demystify management, to help people get if you get the basics right, you know how to run your calendar effectively, you know how to prioritize, you know how to communicate with your team and how to have direct conversations, how to coach people and how to care for people. Then the nuance of, do we have product market fit? And do we need to adjust pricing? We kind of can remove, it's really about removing variables that lead to higher levels of success.
mm,
Most companies implode from internal reasons more than have external reasons that cause them to implode. And then to your point, Alec, now they're doing shiny object syndrome, but they're not doing any of them well.
mm-hmm.
Let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. I remember I did this too. Like, hey, let's do direct mailing. And I sent like one postcard with 10% off. Like nobody responded. That now I know, like, that's not a good direct mail campaign, right? You need to
Mm-hmm.
be compelling, needs to be interesting, to have a good message. You need to run it multiple times, to do something at a really high level, to try and make bets. In the same way, we may face a variable of threats to our company that can hurt us. We also need to make bets and know that not every bet is going to succeed.
Yeah.
But if we're not making, so a good friend of mine is a hedge fund leader. He's done exceptionally well for himself. Me and my wife, who's a CPA, we're hanging out with him at his sweet penthouse in New York. And my wife's like, I'm really conservative. You're in like this crypto hedge fund thing. Doesn't it seem risky? He's like, honestly, if you're not making bets, I see that as the biggest risk.
Mm,
Right? The same thing, a venture capital firm, when they go invest in companies, they're not trying to win all 10.
mm-hmm.
They want one to win and be $1 billion firm. They want
Yep.
one to just break even. The other 8 out of 10, they expect probably won't make it.
Yeah.
So now we don't want the same odds inside our own company, but we may try something, a couple things that's new, that are new marketing strategies, or we may
Mm-hmm.
try this person who we think is a good hire. We don't quite know where they're going to fit, but we think they can make a difference. And so we may
Mm,
try 4 or 5, and if one of them takes off and has an impact, we can learn to live with that. So
yeah.
I don't know. I think I went totally down a rabbit hole. I don't
You
even remember your
did.
first part of your
You
question.
did. And
So yeah.
there's a lot of LinkedIn content that is coming out of that one. The Laker or Phil Jackson coaching me and a couple others on the team is definitely going to be a LinkedIn pullout. But one thing that you did say that I want to just reiterate, and then we're going to move into the final rapid fire leadership questions, and we'll get you out of here, Joe. This has been an incredible episode. But you said more companies implode from the internal than the external.
Yep.
And I just want to double click, make it size 74 font, that I absolutely adore that. Any scenario that we talk about, there's always what are the threats? What are the threats? What are the threats? And
Mm-hmm.
so much of it really is, what are the strengths and weaknesses that we have here? And I'm a big either How I Built This by Guy Raz, or just different podcasts that tell these stories of individual companies. And one that is just really entertaining is the Blockbuster. Like, again, you look at anywhere, Blockbuster could have gone 100 different routes. You mentioned a couple other companies earlier. It wasn't the move to digital that killed Blockbuster. It wasn't the newspapers. I'm going to use this example because it breaks my heart, but I got at the Kansas City Star right out of college, and I remember asking people, why did we not, as an industry, charge for the internet newspapers in 1997, in 1998, 2000? And I remember the day that I got this answer, it's like my third day, I asked this question, and the answer was, we didn't give a shit about the Kansas City Royals fan in Seattle. Yep. And that changed the way that I thought about everything. Because if we just cared about the Kansas City Royals fan in Seattle, I'm probably still a journalist. I'm making a lot of money, and newspapers have a much different perspective in today's society. And that decision alone to say, no, we're good. We've done it our way. We'll figure it out later, changed really the course of an entire industry right then and there.
And isn't it interesting that the companies that valued their content said, we want a subscription. We would rather have less with people who pay for it than more people who aren't going to pay for it. Yeah. Right. And here's the thing, too, I tell leaders, run the numbers.
Run the numbers.
Run the numbers, right? If the numbers don't add up, you might want to change your business model or do something different. If they do, at least that's a start. So, yeah, completely agree. Yeah.
All right. I love it. 47 minutes of just gold thus far. But now we're going to move into the same 4 questions that we're asking every leader, which are 4 rapid fire leadership questions. You've got 30 seconds to answer them. If you go over, it's okay, but I'll just shame you a little bit.
I love shame. It's a powerful tool.
It's a great power. Yeah, let's get into a shame spiral right here on the podcast. All right. Question number 1. What is one leadership habit that you rely on every day?
Prioritization. What is most important for me to do today? And what do I need to spend time on? And what do I need to say no to for everything else?
I love that answer. And I love these questions. We've done 6 episodes now. We've gotten different answers for all these prioritizations. First time I've heard that. It's fantastic.
And because, Alec, too, I don't have direct reports here at Velocity, like a little secret, even though I've been doing a lot of leadership for a long time, which means my client is our customer.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make sure that if I have a program coming up or a coaching conversation, that I'm well prepared for that and give them the best experience possible.
So good. All right. Question number 2. What is the most underrated skill that a leader needs to succeed in 2025 and 2026?
I think that I kind of landed on the calm and assertive approach, right? So, but the assertive side, I think, continues to get lost. I think our language continues to get softer, and that we are less direct. And yet sometimes we just need to be really clear with people and say, hey, here's what we're here to do. I hope you are okay with that and understand that. And I think we're afraid to offend. We can be calm and kind. I kind of differentiate. There's kind and there's polite. We're overly polite with somebody on our team who's not performing because we don't want to offend them. And yet we'll fire them 6 months later.
Yeah.
Because they didn't do what they're supposed to do. Like, that's actually not kind at all.
And
right? Like,
clear is kind, right? And clear has to be direct, and sometimes clear can come off as assertive.
I use a phrase, confusion's the enemy of progress. And the best thing I can do is to make sure my team knows exactly what they're doing, because I hear a cash register ringing for my team, right? So if they're operating and not doing the right thing, then we're wasting money. So how do I make sure that they're doing the right thing, that they have clarity, and they're competent what they're doing, they're operating at a high level?
I love it. We went way over 30 seconds on that one, but I'm going to take the blame for it because I followed up and asked more questions.
No problem.
Question number 3. On the opposite side of an underrated skill, what is one thing that you believe great leaders need to stop doing?
I think that we need to stop separating culture and systems. Sometimes we talk about culture. We're getting together, we're having fun, and we're collaborating, and we're recognizing people. And then we have this whole systems thing over there. And it seems very like we have their head of ops and they're going to run this. Those two are very too interwoven. If you have good systems and people have clarity, it feeds into a better culture. It's not like the nerdy owl guy and the fun, friendly parrot person. They go really, really well together. So we need to intertwine. Good systems and process does lead to better culture when we know what we're supposed to do.
I love that. And it's becoming more of a theme on this podcast that culture isn't just the words. It's not the happy hour on the Friday. It's the
Yep.
systems that we have in place. It's the choices that we make. It's the conversations we have. That's fantastic. Last question here. Number 4, what's the best leadership advice that you've ever received?
So I tie in that slow is smooth, smooth is fast. It's kind of becoming a catchphrase of mine. All my coaches know about it. I put it on the back of T-shirts that I created before. And again, it's a high level, but it can be used in a micro. Hey, I need to have a conversation with somebody. I need to listen. For me, it's probably one of my challenge areas is just slow things down and listen, understand where they're coming from. 2, we need to create a strategic plan as a company. In our case, we help people create strategic plans so we know what we're going to prioritize in 2026. What are our rocks? So we can learn to say no to, Warren Buffett said, hey, don't just learn to say yes to the 5 things instead of 20. You need to learn to say no to those other 15 so you can focus solely on those and do them at a high level so that, as you mentioned, Alec, we're not doing a shiny object syndrome component. So it's just really slowing things down, having deliberate conversations, coming up with a plan, considering contingency plans, executing that plan at a high level. And then we can reflect and be like, man, we did that plan as best as we possibly could, and it didn't work. Great. Next, let's move forward. We learn something and go from there.
Man, I love that answer. 4 questions, 4 brilliant answers, worth the price of admission to listen to this show, which is $0 at this point, but it was still an incredible listen, Joe. I've got one more question for you, but just to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to share your wisdom, your expertise, your perspective, because that's really what the Activating Greatness podcast is all about. We want to feature leaders across the globe in different industries that are taking the pain and the growth mindset and being able to apply it to not only better their individual company, but also help see and fulfill the potential of individuals as well, which leads me to the final question. Joe, who is one leader that you believe we should interview next? Somebody who is doing meaningful work and that others will learn a lot from.
So speaking of Navy SEALs, a friend of mine, Joe Crandall, he's the CEO at a company called Greencastle Consulting, and amazing leader. I think they've probably tripled or quadrupled in size since he bought the company from his previous owner, and just very deliberate in his approach and building systems and culture. Like he does those really, really well. And always when I spend time with Joe, I always get some really good nuggets of wisdom. So yeah, Joe would be awesome.
Well, Joe, I am going to be sending Joe that video and recommendation, and we'll get him on the Activating Greatness podcast in 2026.
Love it.
For those that have listened to this, Joe and I want to keep doing this. We had a lot of fun. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to the Velocity Advisory Group page. If you're listening on Spotify, you can leave a review and rate it 5 stars. You can comment about how exciting it was to listen to Joe. You can connect with Joe on LinkedIn. If you need to connect with me, ask questions of Joe. I'm sure one of the 2 of us will answer and bug you if you have any thoughts. And then if you're listening to this and you're thinking, hey, I should be on that podcast, please reach out. We, I think, have 20 different guests that were already lined up in the year 2026. So we've got episodes flowing from now that you're listening to this, probably mid to end of January, all the way through March and April. But we would love to be able to share your story because, again, the Activating Greatness podcast is really at its core about storytelling and the storytelling of leaders. So, Joe, one more time, thank you so much. We appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us.
Thanks, Alec. This is a lot of fun.